Hey guys, Frank here with another episode of Modern Church Leader, coming to you with my buddy from Vegas, Mr. Lee. How's it going, man?
Hey man, good to be with you. It's early over here, so I got my coffee, but I'm ready to just engage with you, Frank, in whatever
It's
conversation you want to have today. We're going to have fun.
Yeah, I mean it's 8 o'clock, but I still have kids at home. So
Uh, I'm
you
that
get
guy
up.
though. I'm that guy. I'm empty nesting, just get up,
Yeah,
sit
your
outside,
morning was
stare
very
at the
chill.
clouds.
Yeah, mine was
Yeah.
not. I have to, not yell at my kids and help with breakfast and get their backpacks ready. And they're at a new school this year. They got
Yeah, but the
their
problem at my season of life is I got to take a nap at 9 o'clock because I've been up since 4. So, you know what I mean? This is like the last thing I'm going to do this morning, and then I'm going to take a break.
Oh, so give us the context. You've been in ministry for 20 years plus. You're an executive pastor out there in Vegas, but give us a little
Yeah,
bit of your
so
history. Like, how'd you get into the church?
Yeah, so I was a church kid who was initially pretty resistant to ministry calling. Uh, I'm not sure why, as I look at it in retrospect, but now I've been in ministry well over 30 years, and
Wow. Well, you got to
doing
update your
student.
website. Okay.
I
The
know
website needs updating.
doing student ministry for a season and all-nighters and mission trips and lots of pizza and all that. I love that
Yeah.
season and still have a lot of contact with students who came through that season of ministry. Did a lot of good, made a lot of mistakes, as a young
Was that
as a
in
youngster.
Vegas or were you somewhere
Yeah,
else?
so the
Okay.
interesting part about my story, that's probably another podcast, is that I've been in Vegas for about 31 years, and I came here to do student ministry with my wife of less than a year, and said, "Hey, let's go to Vegas. Let's kind of get into ministry, see what happens. We won't be there very long." And here I sit 30 plus years later, still in Vegas, having done ministry. And I got to tell you, Frank, and I know you obviously are a Vegas guy. People may not know that about you, but you got some history here. Um,
Yeah.
I I got here and it just connected with me. And so, the ministry leaders that are listening, sometimes we can be pretty anxious to move up the ladder or whatever we consider the ministry hierarchical to be. And I tried that for a brief season in the middle of my tenure here. And man, it was a train wreck. And I just
Mm,
recognized that, Vegas isn't for everybody, though it seems like everybody wants to come visit me here for some reason. But
yeah.
at the same time, when you find your people, when you find your culture, when you find your environment, that especially when you're following a call to ministry, man, I think sometimes we underestimate that. And we
Mm.
make, what I would say, Frank, we make value decisions based on other things. And I would just encourage people that are listening that, being in Vegas for 3 years, doing student ministry, I was a church planner here, had a dark night of the soul, which is another podcast for another time, and then have been an executive pastor here at a thriving church in Las Vegas for going on 16 years. So I've been a youth
Wow.
guy, a lead guy, church planner, and now an executive guy, and then consulting with churches all around the country. But again, I just feel like, man, if you ever find your place, like you just need to grab it and hold on to it and navigate there's times to leave. I get that. There are times where there's seasons of conclusion, but man, my wife and I raised a family here, and we just, again, we every day we feel like these are the people that God has placed us in proximity to on purpose. And
Yeah.
so that's how we look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you love about Vegas?
I think partly I probably selfishly love that I've been here a long time. And so there's part of me that just loves the familiarity and the routine. I'm
Yeah.
a I'm a weird guy because I'm an Enneagram 8, right? Which, if you're an Enneagram person, people call me an 8 hole. And so, Enneagram 8 hole, which
Wow.
is like, let's go. I know you can edit
Your
that
team,
out later,
your team
but
really loves you, by the way. I can
yeah,
tell.
but so I've got all of that, and then if you're a working genius person, I've done that, and it's like galvanizer kind of personality there. And then in the thinking wavelength, which is a tool we use, it's a Patterson tool we use in Growmentum. I'm like a 7.5 or 8, which is like a finder conceiver, right? And so I like all of that. Like, let's go innovate, change, risk. But in my own life, what's interesting in my own personal existence, I don't love that.
Mm,
So it's almost like in the rest of my world, man, I'm spinning and doing things, and then I want to go to the same place and have breakfast. I want to greet the same barista. I want to drive the same streets. I want to do those things. And so
right.
there's a weird, probably somebody needs to analyze me therapeutically in regards to that. But that's what I love about Vegas is I love the familiarity. I love the long-term anchored relationships that allow me to go out to dinner and greet people and know people. I love
Mm,
that. And then, frankly, Vegas has accelerated as a city. Moving here in 1990, it was all about the potential. And now
right.
living here 30 plus years later, some people would argue it's fast becoming the sports capital of the world. Super Bowl, F1, college football playoffs, professional teams, Stanley Cup champions, all that
I
stuff
mean,
that goes on there,
right?
So it's become a city. Now, one of the interesting things is that when I first moved here, the transient nature of the city was overwhelming. Like, you were doing ministry and you basically would have about a 12 to 18-month window for people.
Mm,
Like, they're going to be here, they're going to kind of get their life together, whatever, and then they're going to go back to Kansas or Ohio or Florida, wherever they came from. That has shifted in the last 5 or 10 years, where now people root here and they anchor here, and so that's been a nice transition in ministry to feel like we're in it a little bit more for the long game as we build
right.
ministry strategies and try to make an impact.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. And man, the sports have come on strong over there.
They
Like
have,
hockey, football, baseball team is coming there.
yeah. In theory, the A's are going to relocate here. The people in
Potentially
Oakland are
go
not
out
too
there.
thrilled about it, but they're probably going to get here, and it's just a place to be. And so there's a lot of buzz, and we got the Sphere now. All your listeners have probably seen that big LED, deal. I'm waiting for the first church to put a Sphere in on their
Oh,
campus, the big
I have
LED
seen
deal.
that
And
thing. Yeah.
it's
I've
crazy,
seen like,
especially when you fly in. When you fly in, it's got something different on it all the time. It's just bizarre. But it's a concert venue. So it opens
yeah.
in October. U2 is going to do like a 30-day residency there, and it's like you're inside the Sphere, and it's like an in the round concert venue with all the immersive experience that's there. So there you go.
When is the crossing going to do a church service there? That's the question.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, like when are we going to build our own Sphere on our campus, right?
Well,
Just
just do one
immersive.
there. Just rent it out and do a
No,
big old service
no
there.
worries. No
I'm sure it's
worries.
not too expensive.
Mm, it's all good. It's all good.
So, okay, so you've been at this for a long time. You recently, in the last handful of years, I don't know how long exactly, but you started, you and it sounds like at least one other buddy, but maybe a few other people started like a consulting group called Growmentum. And so you've spent
Yeah.
enough
So
time doing this and you've decided, okay, let me go help other church leaders.
Yeah, so the origin story there is really, a longer term relationship I had with a fantastic guy, Kay Chung, who's in California and has been an executive pastor. And we met in a different context, as we were both in ministry, serving churches, and was starting to dip our toe into sort of that consulting world, which, right now is a very popular thing to do.
I was
And
going to say,
so,
why another consulting group?
yeah,
There's a few
exactly.
out
Yeah,
there.
we'll get to. Yeah, there's a few out there. So he and I maintained a relationship, and we're both kind of working. And then at one point, he really is the origin of Growmentum. That he individually said, I'm gonna kind of put out my shingle, and I'm gonna begin to work with churches." He had um, a real passion for helping guide churches with specific concepts that we'll talk about a little bit. And then it was really COVID that was the catalyst for he and I joining together, because
Hmm.
he would occasionally reach out, or we would spend time together, and he would talk about, what would it look like for us to join together and to really help churches. Our statement at Growmentum is our mission is to help churches accomplish their mission, right? Which we would also believe is ultimately the Great Commission. And so in 2020, in the midst of COVID, I stepped away from some of the other work I was doing, continued my work here at the Crossing as executive pastor, and joined forces with Kay. And so we've now, over the last 3+ years, have really built both what I would call a consulting company, but really much more of partnerships with churches, many young leaders, churches of all sizes, and we've added some members to our team. And at the same time, we've really started to lean into some of our own IP that we believe is helpful for churches. Our desire is to remain somewhat, I'll use this term, boutique. And what I mean by that is, again, as you mentioned a moment ago, there's numerous great organizations that can help you accomplish your mission, but we really like to dive in deep. Relationally, one of our values is that we want to dive in deep, customize in a customized way to be able to help. And we want to give leaders access to people like myself. One of the things we bring, Frank, is even you in your season, right? We bring what I just recently read is what's called crystallized knowledge. It means that as we get older and we have more experience, we kind of are able, we may not be as quick, but we're able to put concepts together and be able to lead people based on our experience. And so Growmentum has really done that. We have a term we use. We say our objective is to help you pause and regularly work on it, not just in it.
Right.
And that's a big deal. I mean, it sounds cliche, but you lead an organization. I'm here, boots on the ground. And it's just really, the normal suck of the day in any organization, but especially in ministry, is just the stuff that demands your attention. That's kind of what I would describe as in it, right? It's the Asana, it's the phone calls, it's the Zoom calls, it's the meetings. Those things are necessary. But we really believe, coach, and actually equip teams to get up out of the in it into the on it on a regular rhythm, so that then that will dictate the in it. Because the drift is always going to be to the in it. If you're not rhythmic, if you're not regimented around the on it conversations, it's not going to happen by accident. Because the in it, we tell teams when we sit with them, Frank, we're like, hey, we're going to have an on it meeting, and the first thing you're going to recognize in this on it meeting is the in it is not getting done. So every time you stop with your team at Tithely and go, hey, let's really dream, let's get to 35,000 feet, all the stuff at 3,000 feet, the emails, the Slacks, all of that is just sitting there, right? And so you've got to be disciplined.
It's like unnatural. I think it's like completely unnatural, right? In a really weird way. We're taking our leadership team just for kind of a quick, 2-day, one night, not a long thing. But in a few weeks, because and it was a bit ad hoc, right? Like a week ago, we were like, man, we need just some time to talk about future and things like that, and not be on a Zoom meeting doing it. Because there's something about doing it in person that's just better. And but it's weird, right? We're planning the agenda, and it's you still want to talk about today, but the point of it is not to talk about today, right? To talk about a year from now, 5 years from now, and do that kind of planning. But for some reason, it's just not natural. It's it's very fuzzy and not defined, and I can't answer an email or solve a problem. It's just bigger than that, right?
And I think the makeup of our team will sometimes dictate that, because as you analyze your team, you probably have people that really enjoy that work on it kind of thinking.
Oh yeah.
Right. But then you have a mixture of people who are much more equipped to execute and to get stuff done. And you need all those people.
Right.
But sometimes it's very difficult for those, right? It's that tension of, you have dreamers who can't get anything done sometimes. And then you have people who get everything done, but don't know how to actually stop and dream and imagine. We have taken and morphed some thinking around traction, which has been a dynamic organizational leadership tool, and we've taken it and kind of Growmentum it and created some vision dashboards, et cetera, in helping churches design what we call a 10-year vision, a 3-year view, a 1-year plan, and then 90-day rocks, or 90-day must-dos, the priority list. And what's interesting is teams love it. We were just with a team in Seattle last week, about a 7-year-old church plant in the heart of Bellevue, Washington, east side of Seattle, man. And they are just doing really well. They're prevailing, they're reaching their city. But for them to pause and to go, what does it look like? What's a 10-year vision? that it was not normal, right? Like you just
Mhm.
said, it was very abnormal. But by the time we get to the one, then we're starting to get into the in it, right? It's like, okay, what's 10? What is 3? Right? Like, and that starts to get a little bit more detailed. And then 1 is like, what is the next 12 months? What are the 5 or 6 things that we need to accomplish in the next 12 months towards making the 3-year view more likely to be true towards accomplishing the 10-year vision? And that
Right.
all should be dictated. We say this in the church world, we should be led of the Spirit and aware of the strategy. Let me say that for your listeners again. Led of the Spirit, aware of the strategy. That means strategy and spirit are not in conflict with each
Right.
other or
Yeah.
competition. They should be able to cooperate together, right? And
Mhm.
many churches will lean hard one way or the other. It's all strategy, right? And you're like, is God even in this? And then you have
Right.
other churches that are all like, we're just going to let the Spirit do what the Spirit does. It's like, yeah, but I'm not a big Jesus as leader guy, but there is, even as we read the narrative of Jesus' life, there's some intentionality, if you want to
Right.
call it strategy, to where he went, who he talked to, who he interacted with, who he said yes to, who he said no to. There just is, right? And
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
that's where we always talk about, we want organizations to have a clear 10-year vision, a really concise 3-year view, both quantifiable and narrative, right? That then begins to build itself into what are the things that we need to do in the next 12. Now, listen, these 5 or 6 things, they are outside of our work in it every day. Like we
Right.
still got to do what we do, right? But these are the things that we believe are actually going to speak to that vision coming. And people listening, some of you listening are like, yeah, of course. But you'd be surprised, especially again, in the church, nonprofit world, how difficult it is to get teams to think that way. It's just hard.
Yeah, I mean, thinking 10 years out again is like just not it's like not normal, right? Like nobody really like the long view, and 10 years isn't even that long in reality,
It's
right?
not,
Like
not
when you think about, I don't know, just the life of a church, right? Like how long are most churches going to exist?
right.
So like 10 years is not even that long, but how do you get people to like click into the 10-year thing when you're sitting down in your sessions or you're kind of jumping in,
Right.
starting it off? Like, how do you get them to start thinking 10 years out?
Couple thoughts around that. Number one is I think COVID hijacked a little bit of our long-term vision thinking. Let me explain. Basically, in COVID, we were responding weekly. We were
Yeah.
building. I mean, even at Growmentum, we're talking to teams and going, "Hey, you need a 30, 60, and 90-day plan. That's it." Right? Like we don't know. Are we meeting next week? Are we not meeting? Blah blah. Remember those days, right?
Right. Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
the problem is we stopped using the long-term vision muscle, and so now when we go back and say, let's look at a decade down the road, people, they don't even know they haven't exercised that muscle in a long time, right?
Mhm.
Then there's also the thinking that I think became pretty prevalent that I disagree with now. And and my partner has kind of helped me with that. Like, you shouldn't plan long term. The world's changing too fast, culture's changing too fast. Any long term vision statements are ineffective. And I think I bought into that for a while, but I now adamantly disagree. Here's why. Because I think the 10-year vision can capture the heart of your organization with 1 or 2 key metrics. But I think what happens is people build strategy and division. Let me say that again. People build strategy and division. In other words, I'll give you the Crossings 10-year vision, and I can rattle it off the top of my head. And we
Mhm.
worked on this for a number of weeks, okay? And basically, we say this: in 10 years, the Crossing will be a multi-generational, multi-ethnic network of 20 churches with a median age of 35 that's doubled its outward focused impact. That's it, okay? So you think about that and you go, okay, you're going to, in 10 years, multi-generational. What does that look like? I don't know. We got to work on that, right? That's where
Right.
strategy comes in. Multi-ethnic. How do we do that? I don't know. We got to work on that. What is a network of churches? I don't know. Like, we know a little more now, but at the time
Right.
we made that statement, all we knew is we want to have a group of churches in Las Vegas that kind of work together. We're going to call it that. What does it look like to have a median age of 35? Well, right now our median age at the Crossing is, as far as we can tell, 35. So we picked that because in 10 years, if we don't do something intentional, it's going to go up.
It'll go up
So we want to
automatically.
think,
Yeah.
we want to think strategically. How do we drive that down, right? And then doubling our outward focused impact, partnerships, nonprofits, all that. So there's enough there that we can get our teeth around and start to build strategy, but there's not so much that it's so detailed, right? And we always use a golf analogy, Frank. It only took us like 20 minutes to get to golf. All right. Here's the golf analogy that's going to be helpful. When guys are listening right now, they're going, I can't even do 10 years. Listen to me. 10-year vision is like the flag stick 150 yards away. Okay. You see it, you know where it is, you aim at it. If you hit the green, if you're 20 feet, 30 feet away, 10 feet away, if you hit and you're in proximity, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Right. I've seen your golf game. That's
Yeah,
really good.
I'm just, even if I get like generally around the green, I'd be happy.
Correct. But you still need that flag stick to point you in the right direction. Right. And so that's where I would say that analogy works really well to go, we need that flag stick, even though it's way down there, the conditions we don't know. And then we always step back and go, the 3-year view is really when you learn golf, right? Good golf teachers will tell you, you can't trust your alignment when you're standing with an 8-iron 150 yards away. So a good golfer will pick a divot or a leaf or a blade of grass that's 3 or 4, 5 yards in front of them, and they will align themselves with that closer target with the flag stick further down. And that's how we treat the 3-year view. It's the closer thing that you can go, okay, I can put some numbers around that. I can put some data. I can put some statements. I can know whether we're accomplishing that or not, right? And then the 1-year plan is right in front of you. It's the aiming stick that good players use on the driving range and bad players never do. Right? If you go to the driving range and someone's using an aiming stick, they're probably a good player, right? Because they're sitting there and they're holding this. You just know, because they're taking the time. They recognize that their mind and their eyes and their brain are going to lie to them. And so they have to train their body to align correctly in order to have the best chance to hit the target. So we treat the 1-year plan as if it's that aiming stick, right? And we've got the target, we've got the 3-year view, and we've got the 10-year vision. Now let's get right in front of us and do that work. And then on a regular rhythm of working on it, we're going to determine how we're doing. We're going to put some scorecards and some dashboards in place. We're going to build out some things that we can actually measure. How we doing, right? Yep. Hey, by the way, Frank, churches hate measuring.
Butts and seats. I mean, every church loves to measure that one.
They do, as long as there's more butts than empty seats.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Right. But I think when we start to dig in, I think sometimes people are they feel maybe unspiritual about the data, right? And I get it. Like I don't encourage churches to be so data driven, but I think data deserves a seat at the table, right? Like you can tell me narrative stories around things that happen, and I think that deserves a place at the table as well. Yeah. But, I think the data will tell churches, we'll use the old analogy of open front door, closed front door, open back door, revolving back door. Right. You say, well, how do we know, right? Like, well, the data will give you a little bit of an indicator, at least to tell you, it's going to give you information. And you guys do this with the work you do, information that's going to give you some degree of trends that then is going to drive some degree of action. That's what I say about data. Information that presents trends that will drive some action. That's all. And so, when we have a 10-year vision with a 3-year view, we actually do that. The other thing it does is it helps our teams be accountable. Let me use a spiritual word with you, Frank. It helps us to be good stewards.
Right. Yeah.
Right? We like that word stewardship when it comes to finances, but I've really been convicted of late that stewardship is really wider than just financial. Like if you're on a church team and you're listening to this and your work ethic is terrible, I would question your stewardship of that responsibility, right? Or if we're not looking at things and key indicators, I would think that's kind of a stewardship issue, that we've been given by God this thing, his thing, the church, that we're supposed to steward. And yet if we're not paying attention to where it's headed, I think that's just bad stewardship.
I mean, don't you think everybody, the whole data thing and measuring things and tracking things, and it's interesting. Not that I'm, I haven't spent 30 years in ministry like you. I've been to church for a long time, but it's like whether you're a small church or a big church, you're probably counting something.
Yep.
Like, you just like, if you're at a small church, you probably know roughly how many families are in your church just because you can count it because it's a small church. And so you can just in your own head no, I've got this many families, or I have this many kids, or, I have this much, dollars coming in terms of like how I'm running, how's the church budget going?
Right.
Just a very basic budget. So you are always measuring something, even if you're not intentionally measuring things in order to like improve the outcomes, right? Like you
Yeah.
are measuring things. And so the whole like data thing, measuring, tracking, wanting to improve, like I don't even really understand it in terms of like not wanting to do it, because I'm all
Yeah.
data is just meant to help you make better decisions, right? And maybe know more
It
about your
paints a
people.
picture.
Yeah, it paints a
Paints a
picture. I mean,
picture of where we are, right?
yep. Yeah, I mean, just
And I don't
knowing
think
like how many
anybody would
kids.
I don't think anybody would lead their family in the way sometimes we advocate people to lead the church, right? Like if I'm a dad, you're a dad, right? I
Yeah.
want to care for my son. I want to love them, right? So we'll say things like, we just need to love our people and care for our people and all that. And I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was called to, that pastoral part. That's why I'm in Vegas and have stayed here. And in a family, you as the dad, you would expect that a loving father, you would do the same with your kids, right?
Right.
But you
Yeah.
also have a responsibility, right? It's not like you can just love them. You also wake up in the morning and go, man, I need to provide. I want a place for them to be secure. I want a roof over their
Right.
head. I want food on the table. I want education to be possible. That's the
Right.
strategy part that sometimes churches go, well, we're just going to love people. I'm like, okay, well, care for them is actually competent leadership. You
Right.
care for your church by being a competent vision, a leader who wants to care and pastor people. I don't care how big your church gets. I really
Right.
don't. Like every community is different, every context different, every church value is different. But I think we can't ignore the Great Commission. So I've got a church in Indiana that's just doing some amazing things. I was there a few weeks ago, and they had almost 1,000 people fill their campus over a couple of services. And they're in a community that the city itself, only the population is somewhere around 10,000. Now
Yeah.
the county's larger, right? And people are coming, but still, I thought you've got 10% of this city that's next to them actually on their campus today for this back to school deal. I'm like, I
Right.
don't care if you're in rural Indiana or if you're in Bellevue, Washington. If you can be intentional and work on it, we believe that the Holy Spirit will do the rest and will bring whatever harvest God wants to bring.
Yeah.
But that doesn't shirk us of the responsibility we have.
Yeah. 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 I mean, ultimately, God is in control. It's not us, right? Like he's the one
For
moving
sure.
and
For
acting and
sure.
moving the hearts of people. And right, we just want to do our best job. And so,
Mm-hmm.
using data, using systems, using process, having coaching, all the
Correct.
things are meant to kind of be our best. And obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but hopefully, pastors are praying and in the scriptures
Yep.
and getting advice and, all the things they should be doing on the spiritual side of it to lead their church. What do you, when people come to you, when churches come your way, what are they mostly looking for? Like, are they
I think
stuck?
they're
Are they looking to grow? Or, like why are they looking for someone like you guys to help them?
I think I'll say a couple of things. I think number one, that's a great question. I think obviously there can be a little bit of difference in that based on the situation they're in. But I would summarize that by saying they are looking for outside partnership and outside influence and contribution. What I
Mm-hmm.
mean by that is I think every organization, what is it? The Pope Andy Stanley says, time in erodes awareness of, right? So I think
Right.
every organization has the ability to just believe what they believe, continue to do. So most of the time they come to us, obviously they're wanting growth and all those things, but they're wanting someone to come alongside them to be able to speak into what they're doing and to be able to give them a path towards the opportunity for growth,
Right.
right? And so most of the time when we're engaging with churches, and we have churches all over the country who have partnered with us at Growmentum, they're actually not even really looking for an assessment initially, right?
Right.
In the sense of like, hey, come in and tell us all the things we're doing well and the things we're doing poorly. That is actually less and less of a thing. Those things, the practical parts, will be a part of our relationship as we grow deeper together,
Right.
but they're really looking for process. Give us a process, give us tools that will allow us to analyze, to stay on mission, to stay accountable as a team, to know what we should be doing next. all
Mm-hmm.
those things. And
Yeah.
then best practices and assessment usually follow that for sure. Right. I always do this move, Frank, where I'm always like, hey, I'm going to take off this hat and I'm going to put on like the executive pastor hat over here and say, this is the way you need to do it. But I
Yeah.
try to not do that too soon. Right. Because I don't know. Usually the leadership is in the room. The quality of leader is in the room. They just need somebody to help flesh that out and
Yep.
then to be accessible along the way. And so one of the things that is a part of the Growmentum team is that when we enter into a relationship with a church and with the leaders, we tell them you have 100% accessibility to us. Right? It means that we are here alongside you. And so I spend a lot of days here and there responding to text or quick phone calls or things like that are
Yeah.
just helping guys. Hey, man, I'm about to go into a meeting with this individual. Give me some perspective on what I should be looking for or what I should be saying. Leaders, specifically pastors, are desperate for that sort of mentoring in their
Right.
lives alongside of a system that will actually provide some continuity over the long term. So that's what
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
trying to do. It's been
What
fun.
like, yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, and I get, having the outside, um, like confidant, friend, partner that you can go to talk through stuff, and that has also been there obviously and has 30 years to kind of
Yep.
draw on, and then you have a larger team and whatnot. I mean, that's like can be invaluable, right? Because you're like, I need to get outside of my space. And sometimes churches don't have like the network that they're part of where they have that maybe built in. They're, I don't
Right.
know, it's like they're independent or whatever. So I mean, that to me it makes a lot of sense. What do you find, like, what are the biggest obstacles that churches are like facing when they come your way? Like have you identified like, oh, like these are the things they commonly are hitting up against? And because I'm assuming they all want to grow, like
Mm-hmm.
that's the whole point, I would
Well,
guess. Like if they're just sitting there and
well,
like
there's probably some that don't, but typically they're not wanting to engage with an organization like ours.
right, yeah, like if you're
Typically, it's like,
not wanting to grow, you're not reaching out to
then
people
we're
to look for
probably,
help.
yeah, then we're probably not in a good fit for you in what's going on. I think there's a couple things that we typically see that are ongoing challenges. And that is, I'll summarize it a little bit with this. We use a model that we call church on mission, right? Which is basically 5 elements of engagement, or if you want to use the word discipleship, that are indicators of someone moving, of a church that's actually on mission. And then if you crossed out the word church and wrote the word life, that are indicators of someone that is living a life on mission. It doesn't mean they are, right? None of us can see the heart of an individual, but they are indicators
Right.
of that, right? And so typically what we see in churches is that they're very programmatic, right? They're running programs, but they don't necessarily have a structure that gives them an objective.
Right.
So typically the biggest, I mean, kind of to circle back a little, Frank, on your question, is the biggest challenge we see in churches is they really don't have a long-term, and I mean even a year, they really don't have more than like the next year's calendar and budget and what we're trying to do. We want to reach people, and here's our 5 events, and here's our budget, right? And
Yeah.
so number one, I see that as a big need. Number two, I see them getting a flywheel of a church on mission model that they can go, what are the key areas that we need to pour into and actually move people towards a destination? So we help kind of tee that up and help them see what that might look like in their context. And then thirdly, I think partly I see churches that really struggle with trying to understand what we call influence daily. Basically, it's the hardest to measure, and it's the greatest indicator of a church and of an individual's relationship with Christ. Basically, it's influence daily means when Jesus said, be the light of the world, be the salt of the earth. It's
Mm-hmm.
the idea of all this stuff that we're doing as a church. Is there actually an influence daily with our people and with our church that's actually out in the community that's having an influence, right? Is the guy that's coaching the youth soccer team as a follower of Christ, is he having an influence? I don't mean like he's preaching the gospel before practice. I'm saying, is his presence being an influence? Are we an influence in our neighborhoods? Are we an influence as we lead companies, as we work for companies, as we frequent restaurants? And so one of the biggest things churches struggle with is actually taking the content that they put out on Sundays at gathering and actually mobilizing people to influence daily. And so that's a biggie for churches right now, is to go, how does the church become a church that actually influences daily and is filled with people who are doing it in their individual life? And we haven't completely cracked that code, but I think we see when churches begin to focus on it, where they create opportunities to model that so that then it becomes multiplied in people's lives. That actually leads to church growth, believe it or not.
Right.
If church growth is the objective, then we're lost.
Yeah.
That's not the objective, right? It's to be life on mission that then, alongside Influence Daily, really creates disciples.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Have you seen any big breakthroughs as you've been in the work, right? And where you're just like, we've been in the weeds, we're doing the thing with them, and then I know it's not all of a sudden, but through the work, you see these churches have a big breakthrough, and you're like, wow, that was incredible.
I love this example because it's not what you would expect. So there's a church that I've been working with. We've been working with Growmentum for a couple years. Great team there. They're in Canton, Texas, Frank, which is about an hour outside of Dallas. And if you're in the Dallas area and you're listening to this, you probably know where Canton is. The rest of us don't, because it's only known for one thing. It's only known for one thing. They have on a monthly basis the world's largest outdoor flea market. So once a month, people come from all over Texas to Canton, and the whole town transforms into this basically flea market / swap meet thing. Yeah. So there's a great couple who moved there. They just sent me a picture 3 weeks ago of their first Sunday at this church that had legacy, and there was 20 people and $40 in the offering. And we came alongside them a year or two, 3 or 4 years later, and they have done such a phenomenal job of doing this. And I want your listeners to hear this. They have taken principles of engagement and growth, church on mission, etc. Their mission is to help people find and follow Jesus, and they have contextualized them so well. So when you go there, and I've gone there and spoke and worked with their team, it's definitely Canton, Texas, right? It's not Las Vegas. It's not San Diego, California. Right. But they're running the concepts through the context of Canton, Texas. And it's powerful there because it's unheard of there in most cases, right? So people are coming in droves. And last weekend, they had 900 people, and they took all of their people over to a different church that they are now acquiring the building and 8 acres. And they are launching their second location 20 miles away in the next 6 months. And it's crazy. And they're in Canton, Texas. Okay. And so they're never going to be mega probably, but man, in a rural context, they're taking principles and they're making it work. And I believe that that's where at Growmentum, we're pretty excited because we don't think it's just for the big church or the small. We just think that there's principles that are Christ-based, that are spirit-filled, that can work across the board as we live a life on mission, and we determine to be a church and a leadership team that's on mission. It doesn't matter your context; it can happen. So we're excited about that. Frank, can I pitch 2 things before we get off?
You can, and for whatever reason, we're still rolling. My camera's having trouble, but we're still here. So let's keep going.
It's kind of fun. I just see myself. I don't see you, so that's kind of fun.
No, I'm coming back. Don't worry.
I can hear you though. All right. 2 things. Number one is if somebody's listening and they would love to be part of the conversation, at Growmentum, we offer a monthly think tank call that started during COVID as sort of an emergency cry for help and has turned into a couple hundred people that are part of this group that once a month we jump on a call for 60 minutes. We carve it out. And we just have a conversation. We facilitate tools, et cetera, that help church leaders, executive church leaders. And you don't have to be a client of Growmentum or any of those things. We just want you to be part of the Growmentum network. So they can go to the Growmentum website that you'll probably put on this, and they can sign up to get invited to those calls. And there's a variety of topics that happen. And then you're going to be part of something here in the next month or 2 coming up that I'm excited about, that you're helping us with. And that is, because of those phone calls, we decided kind of outside of the Zoom that we wanted to get all these cool people in the same room. And so
Yeah.
October 4th, 5th, and 6th, we're having a Think Tank Live. We call it Think Tank Live, which is basically we invite everybody who jumps on those calls to get themselves to Las Vegas. We have a time of replenishment. We play golf, and we have a whole day of content with some great speakers who are coming in to be a part of it, and conversation around tables. Very small, probably about 60 or 70 leaders. But we're going to have a great time, some great dinner. And Frank, you're helping us with some Top Golf. Just a great time to meet some other folks. So there's still room
And
for
if you
people.
haven't done Top Golf, I mean, it's going to be a blast.
It's a blast. And so there's still room for people to come. Again, it's Vegas. We design it in a way that you have some downtime, some relational time, and also some great content to help you be a church on mission. So you can go to our website. It's right there. There's still room for you to sign up and be part of it. It's for executive level leaders. So basically, we kind of say it's basically lead pastors, senior pastors, associate or executive pastors. Those are going to be the key target decision makers for these conversations on our Think Tank call and our Think Tank Live.
It's going to be fun. I'm excited.
I still don't see you. I still don't see you, Frank.
I don't know what's wrong with the video, but it's all good. This is recorded.
You are a tech guy. You know that, right? You are a tech guy.
The internet goes down sometimes, Lee. I can't control all tech. You know what I'm saying? But
are you on a Tandy? Are you on a Dell? What do you want?
Commodore 64, old school.
The floppy drive went out. Now I can't see you anymore.
Oh, but man, this has been awesome. We could keep going, but I know we both got meetings to get to. But I love what you're up to at Growmentum, and it's just been fun getting to know you over the last few years, and super excited about the conference. So I get to come, hang out with Mom, go to the conference, meet some great pastors, hang out with you. So we're excited. Where should folks go? Like, it's growmentum.com is the main website.
It's growmentumgroup.com. And if they go to that website, growmentumgroup.com, there's information around what we do. Love to have a conversation with people. There's information about the Think Tank call on a monthly basis, and obviously the live conference coming up in October. So growmentumgroup.com is where they should start, or they can follow us on all the social stuff. Instagram, we're pretty engaged there, so they can go to Instagram and give us a follow and keep up to date.
Yeah. And then if they're ever in Vegas and want to check out your church, what's the website for
the Crossing? I'm at thecrossinglv.com, which is the Crossing in Las Vegas. We have 3 locations all over town. And so if there's a church leader that's going to come in or wants to come in, love for them to give me a heads up. Love to be able to connect with them.
Love it, man. Well, Lee, this has been awesome. Thanks, guys, for watching and listening. Even when my video went out, this has been great today. And we'll catch you next week on another episode of Modern Church Leader. See ya.
Thanks, Frank.